now this may seem strong, it is, because we assume that this is independent of you. But if you think about it, it would not be very appealing to have it depend on you, because then if the criterion you end up using actually depends on the distribution, then there are so many cross effects that they are completely impossible to disentangle. And again, if you think of threshold principles, typically the threshold doesn't depend on the objects you want to compare. So our next our property is what we call regularity. And regularity says, based on these sets, says basically that for all k, these sets contain at least two elements, and this set is bounded. Right? So we don't want unbounded sets, because then there's a bit that would involve a bit too much comparison. And the final property is really a property that takes care of the symmetry that's inherent in this definition of a threshold, right? It doesn't matter which way you go, it has to be symmetric somehow. And a property that takes care of the existence of such a critical level. And the existence of a critical level, by the way, can be generated very easily, well, easily, not easily, but very intuitively, because what a critical level does for you is it avoids the unpleasantness of averaging rules, in the sense that if you make any comparisons, if people are totally unaffected by which ones you consider better than the other, then these people shouldn't matter. That's important because remember, we want to have a very comprehensive notion of well-being that includes everybody who may be affected, in particular our expectations of the well-being of future generations. At the same time, you could say, well, let's just start history from now and don't worry about people who lived in the past. We can't really do this because there is no now in that sense, because by the time I finish this sentence, chances are somebody else will have been born and the population has already changed. So this is actually, in one version where we have an explicit, we as in Blackaby, Foster, Johnson, an explicit version of time. We call it independence of the utilities of the dead. Because if somebody like Cleopatra, Socrates, no longer exists, any decision we make now will not affect them. The problem is, do we have to find out what their lifetime well-beings were? Make it worse? Do we have to find out the levels of lifetime well-being of anyone who lived in the remote, distant past? The answer is we better not, because this is a quite difficult, if not to say impossible task. Independence of the utilities of the dead says whatever their lifetime levels of well-being were, they shouldn't influence you. And that precisely gets you, well, not precise, gets you the additive structure of utilitarianism, or to be precise, generalized utilitarianism, and it gets you a fixed critical level. So this unpleasantness that you have with average utilitarianism, with an independence condition of that nature, goes away. Yeah.
Maybe you have to repeat because another critical set is an assumption.
Oh, no, this is a definition, and we use this is a definition and the property. And the property is what we call regularity. Yeah. So this is a definition. Yeah. Sorry for not. No. So our final property is basically a critical level principle that says, well, implicitly that there is a critical level, and whatever happens regarding non-comparability should be symmetric. Because we need this symmetry, otherwise we don't get a threshold principle, right? So we have, what do we call it? Symmetric critical level principles. And that says basically we assume that there exists a critical level. Again, we could get this from stronger assumptions such as independence, which is basically capability. There exists such a level, such that for any possible population size difference k, for any positive population size difference k, and for any two utility levels C and C prime in R, if it is the case that C is in QK, and C and C prime are equidistant from alpha. So
Of this QP.
C minus alpha is equal to C prime minus alpha.